Welcome back to the Successful Working Parents Podcast. Today's guest, she is a partner at True Search, an executive recruiting firm, and she's a mother of two. Ladies and gentlemen, Teresa Green. Hello,
Hi,
welcome.
Anthony. Hi, Anthony. Nice to spend some time with you today.
Yes, thank you for joining. Excited to talk to you. So we usually just jump right in with a little background on your career, if you don't mind sharing.
Yeah, for sure. Listen, I've been working since I've been 15, so I've got a really long career at this point. Worked my way through college, studied business, had an interest in HR because one of my classes that I took was employment law, and so that sort of piqued my interest in HR. But I loved working with people, so I actually fell into recruiting after college, which many individuals usually do in this profession. And I just stayed in it for my whole career. I loved connecting people. I loved connecting people with the right career opportunities and getting to know their talents. And so I've had a long career in that profession. I worked for executive search firm earlier in my career, and then for some personal reasons, I actually stepped and moved in-house for well over a decade or so, and then returned to my true love of executive search this last year. So my whole career has really been about connecting people, connecting companies with great talent, and bringing joy, hopefully, to people's lives.
Great. And tell us a little bit more about your role as mom.
Yeah. So I have two boys. One is a junior in college, getting ready to do an internship this summer before his senior year. So that's a big mom moment, knowing that he's not going to come home this summer for very long. And then I have a
Mhm.
younger son who is a freshman in high school, an avid lacrosse player. He keeps me on my toes all the time, running around to different lacrosse tournaments and fields, and trying to get him through high school. So two fabulous boys.
Would you say that your experiences in HR and recruiting have informed the way that you parent at all?
That's a really interesting question to think through. I mean, it probably has. I don't know if it's directly tied to recruiting, but it's probably just talking about, like, always talking with my boys about, like, how to make sure you're doing things that bring joy to your life, right? So when you're thinking about your schoolwork, or you're thinking about, a job mowing lawns, or you're thinking about an internship over the summer, think about it in a way that you're getting the most out of it, you're enjoying it. Again, step into new territory and learn new things, but also make sure that you're doing things that bring you personal satisfaction and happiness. And that's something I've learned throughout my career. I talk to people about related to their careers, and I do bring that to the conversations with my family, because to me, life is certainly too short, and you want to make sure you're getting the most out of it. So I bring that perspective to all angles.
Yeah, I bet that your career has given you a pretty unique perspective on career fulfillment and work life balance and that sort of thing.
For sure, it has. I've talked to people since I was probably 22 years old, talking to people about their careers. And those people were, 20, 30 years older than me. And now many of them are sort of in the same age group. And I think what I've learned along the way is, everyone sort of shares their own life lessons and stories. And there's no right path or answer to how you manage a career. You have to do what's right for you. And so I have learned a lot along the way from those individuals that I've spoken with, and it's helped me navigate my balance, my work-life integration, and then the career choices and family choices that I've made along the way.
It sounds like it's not necessarily one size fits all, but I'm curious if you do have any tips on finding a career that you find fulfilling or what to look for in a job when weighing those sorts of things.
Yeah, you're right. It's not one size fits all. I mean, I think when you are making career choices, it's possible, right? This is not a one size fits all answer either, but it is possible that you might make different career choices at different points in time in your career, right? So if I think about my own personal journey, I mentioned in the beginning that I was in executive search earlier in my career and I've returned to it now. I left executive search at a point in my life where I was actually a single mom to my older son. And I left it because it was just unsustainable. So even though I found a lot of joy and satisfaction in the work, and there was a lot of potential from an earnings perspective and career achievement perspective, I had to step aside and go to a more corporate role to find balance because I couldn't travel all the time. And so, I certainly sort of made that very intentional choice in my career to go in house and a really, really fulfilling career in house for plenty of years where I managed large teams. I worked globally. I actually got remarried during that time and had my second son. But you have to make choices based off of all of you. I believe that you have to figure out what is going to make you satisfied professionally and personally. And those two things need to come together or you won't perform at your best.
Yeah. What about work-life balance and juggling family life with career life? What have you done in your own life, and what do you see is important to other people that you talk to?
Yeah. I often refer to it as work life integration versus balance because, balance to me feels like you might be leaning one way versus the other, and you do sometimes. But to me, it's like, how do you bring those things together? And so, when I think about that, the tips that I've, you know, applied in my life or the things that have helped me achieve that integration is first of all setting boundaries, right? So putting structure to my life as much as I can, setting boundaries and communicating boundaries. So a good example of that is, I've always held a pretty strong value on like trying to have family dinner if I can. I really like that. I like to cook. I like to spend that time together. The hour of family dinner may vary, right? So I sort of have that commitment to myself, but and I put the structure in that we're going to have it together, but I'm also flexible at the same time to say, okay, tonight it's going to be 6 and tomorrow night it's going to be 7:30 based off of work or sports schedules or other things. But that's something that's helped me find some integration because I want both sides of my life to be happy. I've also tried to think about when something is good enough versus perfect. That's been a theme that I've tried to apply again to both personal and professional life so that I don't go overboard and that I can find that integration of my personal and work life and I'm not going too extreme on one side or the other. And there's some other, obviously, like practical tips and tricks, but those are, I'd say, the bigger bucket themes is to think about structure and boundaries um, and knowing when to pull back on something.
When it comes specifically to parents and the candidates that you talk to and things like that,
Yeah.
how often is that coming up for them where like they want to make sure that they are able to manage their family life better, and what are you seeing there?
Yeah, it comes up a lot. I'm fortunate in my career to talk to executives every day. As a partner in a retained search firm, I get to talk to chief people officers, chief product officers, chief financial officers, you name it. And when I talk to them about what they're looking for in their career moves, quite often, the concept of family comes up. And sometimes it comes up in the concept of like relocation. Are they able to move? Sometimes it's related to travel, how often they're willing to hop on a plane. But and sometimes it's not even related to children, right? It could be that they're a caregiver of an elderly parent, or a partner or someone. So it does come up, and it is a factor that many people use in terms of deciding their career move.
Yeah, as I mentioned, I have a kid coming up in July, and I've been traveling a bit for work, but I've kind of been communicating like whatever you need now, I'm game, but in July I'm probably going to have to not be traveling quite as much, at least
Yeah.
initially.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, yeah, well, you say initially, but right, that might be the case then, but you might fall in love with this little baby. I'm sure you will. And you might say, like, I can travel, but maybe I don't want to travel as much, right? So your life might
Yeah.
get easier. You might be fortunate enough to have a lot of support around you, which is great. Everyone should take advantage of as many offers as they can. But you might also say, I don't want to. I don't want to travel. And so again, these are things that I think you learn along the way, and you set your boundaries. I remember earlier in my career when my kids were really young. I was fortunate enough to have resources to have a nanny that I brought into the house. But many people kept saying to me, like, why don't you just hire an au pair? They'll live with you, they'll do so much more, and it'll make your whole life easier, and you could travel more. And I said, you know what? I don't, I respect that some people want that. I didn't want that. I wanted to be able to do some of those things for my family myself. And so, and that's where I made that conscious trade off to say, okay, this phase of my career is going to be pulled back a little bit because I want to focus a little more on my family. And then now that my kids are a little bit older, I'm able to step into a different phase of my career. So, I'm so excited you're going to have a baby this summer, and it's going to, hopefully bring lots of joy to your family. But you'll figure it out along the way, right? It won't be like,
Yeah. Yeah.
at 3 months I'm going to travel. You'll
Yeah.
you'll figure it out.
Yeah. We're really into it. We're getting our sleep now. I think that's been the number one suggestion.
Yes,
Um,
that's true.
what what sacrifices have you made, whether it's on the career side or on the family side, while
Yeah,
juggling the two?
yeah. Well, I think I don't know that I would actually call them sacrifices, right? For me, when I think about your question, it's it's not giving something up for a reward in another category. It's more, I think about it more of just making a trade-off at a point in time. And so, I think I could have probably accelerated to different roles in my career more quickly, right? Had I been able to travel more, put in more hours, you know, be at other people's beck and call earlier in my career when I was a single mom. So yeah, I think I probably could have accelerated to the positions that I've been in more recently, um, probably in my 30s, right? But I didn't want to. So again, not a sacrifice. It was just like a deliberate, intentional choice for me. And then, on the other end, occasionally, yeah, I have had to make choices to say, okay, I am going to do this client call, or I'm going to take this business trip. And maybe that means I won't be able to see this sports game, but I know I'll see the next one. I'll have my husband, text me real time updates on the scores, and I'll call my son before and after the game to wish him luck and see how he's feeling about it. So make those choices, but can't always again go too much on one side.
Yeah, that's a great way to think about it. Not really as a sacrifice. How are you on the lacrosse field? Are you one of the screaming moms? Are you one of the calmer moms? Do you get intense?
So I'm a goalie mom.
Okay.
My son is a lacrosse goalie. So at first, boy, was that hard seeing, balls flying at him. Pretty harsh lacrosse balls. I don't know if you know what
Sure.
they're like,
Yeah, yeah.
flying at him at, when he was probably in third grade and started, they were probably flying at him at, I don't know, 30 miles an hour. Now they're flying at him at, 80 miles an hour. And so it's hard. So I don't scream. I think I'm more of a cringe mom. Like every time
Mhm.
I see the ball coming at him, I cringe. I'm like, oh gosh, I hope he's okay. Hope he doesn't have too many bruises coming out of this. And then I also have like the feelings of, oh gosh, how is he gonna feel at the game, right? How is he gonna feel about that save, or how is he gonna feel
Sure.
about missing that shot? So I'm more of the maybe the soulful mom on the sideline, and then I'm also poking my husband with my elbow a little bit because he's definitely the screamer.
Great. Um, so how do you manage your time? What's been useful time management tools? Your busy professional, you're busy mom, you're going to lacrosse games and things like that. How do you manage your time?
Yeah. I've always been a big list maker. So I have multiple lists going at any given time. I have a personal list of personal to-dos, a professional list. I often segment them by short-term and long-term goals. So one of my all-time favorites is actually they even make a notepad for it, but it's today's top three. And to me, it's like, what are the top three things I have to get done personally and professionally today? So I have two top three lists. And sometimes I don't get through them all, but it just keeps me focused because there's often so many things to do. It's hard to prioritize, and just like forcing yourself to identify what those top three things are is a really, really important tip, and sort of holding yourself accountable to getting those done. So that is probably my most practical and effective tip for me. Um, Another tip for me is taking time to clear my head or time for myself. And so, whether that be taking my dogs for a walk, to break up work life and family life, or to even just clear my mind so that I can get refocused on the things that I need to do. Sometimes stepping away like that with the dogs, or even just 5 minutes standing on my porch, clears my head. Um, Other practical tips. Honestly, it's asking for help and delegating. So, knowing that I'm not in it alone, and whether it's asking a teammate to say, this has to get done today. We need to do it together, but I've got another meeting. Can you please help? Not being afraid to ask and carry that weight on your own shoulders. That is a very, very effective tip that I've learned over my career. And the same thing goes at home, right? Asking a family member or a friend to lean in and do something. So, telling my son to switch the clothes over in the dryer or do his own laundry, like you have to delegate. So those are sort of my practical tips, just trying to keep my priorities straight, trying to make some time for myself to clear my head, and then asking for help.
Was that hard for you? Maybe more professionally than personally, asking for help and delegating and things like that, that take time to get comfortable with?
Yeah, for sure. And on both sides, actually, I would say professionally and personally. I think on the professional side, it was hard to ask for help because you want to be seen in a certain light, right? And you want to feel like you can get everything done on your own and have these own sense of like achievement and career moments. But I believe you like I would help others, so I want others to help me. So it was hard at first, but it's something I've practiced and been very intentional about over my career. It was actually some feedback that I got earlier in my career where someone said that, like, you don't need to do it all. You're putting too much on yourself, and that means maybe you're not performing at your best. You could be even better if you do ask for help. So literally, I wrote down the word delegate and like stuck it to my computer monitor because I'm a very visual person, and so I needed that in front of me every day to remind me that was something, a habit I needed to form. And on the personal side, it was hard too, a little bit from maybe a guilt perspective, right? Carried guilt, like, oh, I should be doing this all. I should be able to be this, super mom. Uh, and something that I've definitely really struggled with. I think the moment for me where I learned to delegate and ask for help the most on the personal side was actually just recent, in very recent years. My mom, who we lost last year, was suffering from like terminal cancer, and I had sort of work, my own family. It was a caregiver role as well, and I had to ask everyone for help, right? Because we needed to get through that, and I needed to support her and help her be comfortable with the time that she had left. So, I was outsourcing meals, carpools, and just let the non-important things go to the side because I knew what was important at that time. So, yeah, it's hard to delegate, but I think certain moments, whether it's the feedback that you get in your career from maybe a boss or a mentor, or a moment in your personal life that pushes you out of your comfort zone to delegate, you learn it. And when you learn it, then you hopefully stick with it.
When it comes to list making, are you
Mhm.
just kind of ad hoc writing down on sticky notes? Do you use a notepad in an app? What's kind of the actual nitty gritty of how you do it?
Yeah, I tried the app, right? um, and and for me, again, I'm a very visual person, so I'm a classic sticky note kind of gal. I do keep long-term notes in my iPad or iPhone in the Notes app. And that's sort of like the, hey, what do I want to get done across the next 6 months? We need to plan this, plan that. But for the things that are really the daily three that I mentioned, that is literally on a little sticky note. And one is kind of on the refrigerator for the personal stuff, and one is here on my desk for the work stuff. Because my phone goes dark, right? You got a lock screen, and I want it there in front of me all the time as a visual reminder.
Sure. You also mentioned finding time for yourself. I'm really
Mhm.
interested in self-care, and I feel like it becomes more important actually when you become a parent because you do have less time and it's easy to just let that part go. So I'd love to hear more about how you practice self-care, if it's just being alone or what else you like to do for yourself.
Yeah. So again, it's something also I feel like I've been more committed to in recent years. Certainly one of those people who jumped on the Peloton bandwagon during the pandemic, and that actually has been great, because it's been more convenient for me. Again, fortunate to have the resources, but more convenient for me. And so I've been more committed to physical health. And there are a couple of things that I also have just started to really enjoy. So like every Sunday night, I take an online yoga class, and it's like a reset for me of, okay, it was a busy week. I had a really enjoyable weekend with family. I just want to sort of stretch out my body, clear my mind, and have that time to myself. So that has become a pretty strong ritual for me. And it's literally Sunday at 7 o'clock, because that seems to be just a peaceful hour for me to make the transition. But I also take time at other moments to do things that bring me joy or comfort. Sometimes when I've had a really busy week and I'm overwhelmed and I feel like there's still a lot to do, I try to engage in a hobby of mine where it's actually baking. So if anyone's
Okay.
looked at my LinkedIn, you'll see that I love baking. And I think why I love it is that there is like a beginning and an end, and I feel success. And so that actually is a way for me to like do self care, which is like feeling like I've done something that I enjoy eating afterwards. I can complete it and finish it and check it off. And as silly as it seems, that brings me a lot of joy from a self care perspective too. So maybe balancing out the physical stuff with the baked goods.
Sometimes after a hard day, you just need a brownie, and that's all. That's all
Yes.
it takes.
I'm with you. The more chocolate, the better.
Yeah. What's some good advice you've received in your career?
um, Lots of it. I've been fortunate to have some great mentors. Probably the one that has stuck with me the most is be honest with yourself. Um, like truly think about what you can do, what you can't do, what you want to do, and be honest with yourself. Follow your instincts. I received that advice after actually making a career decision at one point to go into a role because I thought it would help advance my career. But I knew in my gut that it wasn't the role that I really wanted. And so I spoke to a mentor about it afterwards, and I was like, why didn't I do my best in this role? And they said, well, reflect back to when you decided, like what were your decision criteria? And I walked them through it, and they said, like you weren't being honest with yourself. You weren't being honest about whether or not this role was going to make you happy. You were just thinking about the outcomes from it. And And so for me, that was a big piece of advice, was to be honest with myself about what I'm capable of, what I'm going to do, and why.
Yeah, I think that's really good, especially maybe earlier in your career when you want to be seen as a certain type of person and you want to kind of fit a certain mold, but it's important to really just be honest with why you're doing what you're doing.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I truly believe that if you step into a role for someone else's reasons, right? Or, what you perceive are the right reasons, you're not going to perform your best. You have to step into a role or a career opportunity for your own reasons.
What advice would you give to your former self?
Hmm. Um, I I would probably say, that's a really tough question. You've stumped me on this one because I haven't reflected on that. I'm a person that really lives forward, not backward. So I would probably say, actually, here it is. Uh, Take more risks earlier in your career when you don't have other things tugging on you. So for me, it would have been maybe trying to find a way to live or work internationally. And I didn't, I wasn't not a big risk taker, and so I didn't seek out those types of opportunities. But now they sound kind of exciting to me. So, and as you get again more tied down to things, it's harder to take some of those risks. So that's probably it. Take more risks when you can.
That's a good one. I my one regret from college, well, maybe not my one regret, but I do I do wish that I had studied abroad. That was one thing I didn't do that seemed like a great opportunity that you really when do you really get a chance to just live in another country for 3, 4, 5 months without too many cares?
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
Uh,
And I've shared that with my kids now too. Like,
yeah,
do you have those experiences, do those things.
we were talking earlier about what you see from people looking for jobs and just in the recruiting world. So, what advice would you give for somebody who's trying to figure out what they want to do with their career?
Yeah. Um, well, I've always asked them about the types of the general question I ask people is, where do you see yourself next from an environmental perspective? Like, not necessarily the role, right, or the company, but what are the things at work that make you feel the most fulfilled? What are those factors? And so, is that the type of leader you're working for? Is it the type of work you're doing on a daily basis? Is it the people that are surrounding you? Is it the mission of the company? And so, um, that was my advice, is kind of to reflect on the elements of the role rather than a role or a destination themselves. So that's what I would encourage people to do, is think about what's again going to bring them the most satisfaction and joy at work.
All right, last question.
Yes.
My wife is expecting July
Mm,
19th. We have a baby girl on the way.
congrats.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So, what advice do you have for me?
Well, soak up every moment. They grow up fast. I can't believe how fast 21 years have gone with my older one. You probably hear that one quite a bit. Um, I would also say, just remember in the moments that there is something, like there's always something really fun and wonderful and charming in each phase, and that there's something really challenging in each phase. So, like when you've got your newborn and they are screaming bloody murder in the middle of the night and waking you up constantly, that's going to seem super challenging. But then you're going to look back on it later and say, "Oh gosh, how cute they were," and they really needed me, right? And so just trying to remind yourself of the really great things that are in the moment, in addition to some of the challenging things. They always say there's, what is it, like little kids, little problems, big kids, big problems.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that's probably true, but there's always something great and something challenging. So soak it all up.
Yeah, I'm sure when you deal with some of the challenges of having a teenager, you probably would prefer to just not get as much sleep and feed a crying baby, right?
Yes, that's right. I think about that often, like, oh, geez, changing diapers 20 times a day, that was a breeze, right?
Right. Yeah.
You know, yeah, you definitely would prefer some of those. But, at the same time, you also, as they get older, they need you in different ways, and it can be a lot of fun. As I mentioned at, I think, the beginning, my older son is going off for an internship this summer. And boy, this last year, did he also need me a lot. Like he was constantly pinging me, asking me for tips on how to interview and how to write a thank you note. And so they need you in different ways. And my 14-year-old, needs me for advice on, relationships and things that they go through. And so your baby's gonna need you for different things when you're little, sort of the basic care and feeding, and then different types of care and feeding as they get older.
And how about just the next like 10 weeks? Any advice for how to navigate that?
um, Catch your moments of sleep while the baby's sleeping. Let the house go. Outsource meals. Uber Eats is your best friend. And support your partner or your wife, right? You're in it together. So let the little things go.
Great. Well, I appreciate that. I'm sure my wife
Yeah.
appreciates that too. So anything you want to promote or share, or where can people connect with you and learn more about you?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Thank you. So, yes, you can certainly connect with me on LinkedIn. Teresa Green, partner with True Search. You can also find me on True Search's website. I love to talk to people about their careers. Love to get to know, particularly, chief people officers, because I've been in the talent world many years myself. And thank you for the opportunity to share my story. I love to hear people's career stories as well.
Awesome. Well, it was great talking to you. Appreciate it. And thank you again for your time.
Thank you.